The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning around. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition. It is June 17th, 2014. Tonight, I'm going to be breaking down the chaos in Iraq. Or the current chaos in Iraq, I should say, because I think if I came on air and said the chaos in Iraq, somebody's going to, rightfully so, by the way, say to me, well, which chapter of the chaos in Iraq? Well, the current one that we see going on right now. But I would be remiss in my duties if, while I was discussing this with you all, I would be remiss in my duties if I didn't go back in time a little bit. We didn't go over history. There's that saying that those who don't understand history are doomed to repeat it. That's why I consider it one of the most important subjects you could learn about. And that's why history was changed in schools a very long time ago to social studies. And the whole curriculum was changed, but I digress. So the chaos in Iraq. Where do I begin? Where do I begin? We have ISIS. Ooh, big scary ISIS. So bad even Al-Qaeda doesn't want anything to do with them. Don't get me wrong, they are bad guys. I don't think that they're some made-up group. Definitely not ragtag. You see them marching around. They're actually, they're more impressive when you see them marching down the streets, even in their little Toyota and Mercedes pickup trucks with their guns in the air and screaming. They're still more impressive looking, more squared away looking, maybe is the better word, than those crappy Al-Qaeda training videos we used to see all the time on the newsreels playing in the background as they're talking, Al-Qaeda could be in your suitcase. Film at 11. You see the one guy running and jumping on the monkey bars, and he's doing, one bar to the next, and oh my God, look, scary Arab guy with a hood on his head, and oh my God, he's tucking and rolling, and he's shooting a machine gun, oh my God. You see these ISIS guys, they actually look more AJ squared away. Look like they've had some sort of formal training. Wonder where Al-Qaeda fighters would get formal training. Oh, that's right. Syria. Syria plays into this. By the way, suddenly you're supposed to be afraid of ISIS, and this is the new threat. Oh, dun dun dun! The U.S. needs to get involved in Iraq to kick ISIS's butt. We must go in. We have to do it. Yet these are the same people that were arming in Syria. John McCain's flying in doing photo ops with these people. These are the same individuals. No, Popeye, those are different freedom fighters. Really? Because you can tell the difference from Al-Qaeda and freedom fighter how? Those are the Mujahideen of Syria. Excuse me. I have to puke a little bit in my mouth. I'm sorry, I got a little nauseous. The propaganda just... You see what I'm being facetious and sarcastic. The propaganda is just nauseating and sickening. Come on. Freedom fighters. So the same people that were arming in Syria were fighting in Iraq again? But we were fighting them in Iraq like 10 years ago, and now we're fighting them in Iraq again, but we're arming them at the same time in Syria? Benghazi, anyone? Anyone notice that a lot of these fighters have American-made weapons? Look like M4s. Seen some EOTech scopes out there. What? What? Where are they getting that stuff from? How does American-made weapons get into... Well, you know, they took Iraqi armories. So that's how they got the American-made weapons. Really? Really? Maybe, and I'll get into this, but maybe anybody ever wondered that what better way to cover up the truth of Benghazi and the weapons running that was going on through there, and that's why Stevens was killed, by the way. But anyone ever think that maybe a good way to cover up that fact? Because people are going to say, well, then how do these guys get American-made weapons? Well, now they can just say, well, they took them from overthrown Iraqi military bases or positions, right? Right? Because that's where all of it came from, right? None of it came from the stuff that was in Libya that was getting raided by these very same people, these freedom fighters, okay? These freedom fighters. The freedom fighters in Libya went to go fight in Syria, right? And I'm being facetious when I call them freedom fighters. The terrorists, okay? Al-Qaeda went from Libya to Syria. We have to back them. We have to back them. Now they're going into Iraq and attacking the Iraqi military, and for whatever reason, the Iraqi military. I mean, you could list a litany of reasons. Perhaps the higher ups were told to let it happen. Who knows? All I know is it collapsed on many fronts. It fell apart, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that Bush did what they called the de-Baathification of Saddam's former governor, or the Iraqi government, when we invaded in 2003, and they disbanded the original army, which that really creates a problem because, well, we don't want anybody that's loyal. Well, the problem is a lot of those people had nowhere to go, and then a lot of these generals and stuff ended up becoming insurgents, and so a lot of them were killed and stuff. And then there was a real grassroots, I guess you could say, insurgency in Iraq of people that were fighting back. There were also foreign fighters, but there was this also grassroots insurgency, I guess you could say, or real freedom fighters, fighting for the freedom of their country against what they perceived to be invaders, and rightfully so, because we were invaders and occupiers. We're there bringing democracy, Popeye. Oh, stop it. Really? Really? You bring democracy and freedom through bombs and cluster munitions and machine guns and depleted uranium? Really? And death and tanks? Really? Okay. Really? And by the way, Al-Qaeda wasn't in Iraq until we invaded, and then they came in. Just so everybody's clear. Okay, Saddam didn't have these problems. There was no car bombs going off in Baghdad or in other cities. This stuff didn't happen. Saddam was a lot of things, but the one thing, his intelligence services were on point. They knew who was who and what was going on. That's why it was so hard to get him. That's why they tried with the economic hitman. Didn't work. You've all heard this before, I'm sure. They sent in the economic hitmen, didn't work. Jackals couldn't get to him, the assassins couldn't get to him. Security and their intelligence was just too good. Was the best in the Middle East, by the way, until we bombed the hell out of it and dismantled it. Well, we took them down with ease. No, we didn't take them down with ease. And yes, we did take them down. But in the Middle East, they were a force to be reckoned with. A lot of people bash Iraq and they say, well, Iraq is a dirty, stinky place. Those people are back ass and screw them. We should nuke the whole place. Well, that comes from a kind of a place of arrogance, because Iraq used to be a very beautiful country. A very beautiful country. Of course, Saddam Hussein, yes, he was a CIA agent, and he was a card-carrying CIA agent, not an asset, but he was an actual trained CIA agent, and he was, we'll say, installed, right? And he was tolerated for 25 years, right? He wasn't a gem, we'll say. He was evil in his own right, but Iraq was much better off when he was in power. This is before the obvious sanctions and everything. They were better off to a certain extent with the freedom that women had there in certain areas. They didn't have what you see now, the chaos. They had, electricity. A lot of the problems with electricity, well, they didn't have electricity and we invaded. Saddam was a dick and he would turn the power off. No. A lot of that was from the sanctions and the bombings that happened during the first Gulf War and then after it, leading up into 2003. We would randomly bomb things, and we would bomb milk factories and other places. Well, when you take away, you blow up factories that make books, you blow up factories that make powdered milk and all this other stuff that's used to feed the younger generations and help formulate brain cells, because you need proper nutrition for the child to grow healthy. We all know this, okay? It's common sense. Because these kids, over the course of 12 years from 91 till 2003, did not get the proper nutrition, and many of them were very ignorant and stupid, literally, just like we would be if we didn't have any formal education and, you're living out in the desert and the only thing you're exposed to is maybe herding goats, or even if you're in a city, you're not, if you're not exposed to much and there's not much around and the infrastructure is falling apart because of sanctions, because they couldn't even import parts to fix like power plants and water plants and stuff. When the Marines invaded and the 1st Infantry Division and the 3rd ID and all these other guys went in there, ask any of these guys, ask any of these ground pounders, Marines, soldiers, Air Force, ask any of those guys that were on the ground what those water pump stations looked like when they got in there. I mean, we blew the hell out of a lot of stuff, but ask them what the stuff looked like condition-wise when they got in there. Some of this stuff wasn't working, and it hadn't been working in years. It's from the sanctions. So we dumbed down everybody over there to a large extent, just through the sanctions and the bombings and everything else. That made them stupider to a certain extent. Not lower than us on the humanity scale, but intelligence-wise, thinking-wise, understanding-wise, they were the whole country to a large part was being dumbed down. Iraq was the place that the first heart transplant in the Middle East took place years ago. I mean, it was a beautiful country. Yeah, they had the Iran-Iraq war, which of course was funded by, just like every other war, by the same banking cartels, right? And the weapons and stuff were supplied by both sides, right? Or by the same people to both sides, I should say. But Iraq was not like it is now. I mean, we literally helped bring Iraq back 300-400 years in time. It's really sad what we did to that country. And I say we because even if you didn't fly a jet dropping a bomb, or you didn't put boots on the ground or shoot anything or anyone, or even if it wasn't your family or your friends, you still allowed it to happen. Even if you didn't agree with it, you still allowed it to happen because it's happening. If we didn't want it to happen and we really wanted it to stop, it would stop. We're not powerless. We all know that by now. So we have to take some responsibility in this. Once we admit that to ourselves, then we can do the right thing and put an end to this agenda. And that's what you see going on with, like, when they tried to bomb Syria. oh, suddenly people are more hip to what's going on, and now we put a monkey wrench in the works. So see, it can be done. But this is, again, this thing with Iraq is just another way to get into Syria, because then they can say, oh my God, they're taking the weapons from Iraq into Syria, which they are. They're taking Abrams tanks. So American-made, third generation, I think, Abrams tanks are being driven by Al-Qaeda into Syria, across the border from Iraq into Syria, right? And now will be used to fight the Syrian military over there. And remember, the Iranian military is over there helping out in Syria. So now American, I mean, it's not even like, well, we didn't supply them, Popeye. Right. To me, you want to know the truth? A large part of this, because everybody said, well, Obama was playing golf. How could he just sit back and let this happen? And everybody says, well, it's Iraq's problem. We're not going to get involved. And then now they're sending troops over. Well, I think, and I'll get into this in a little bit more, but I think a large portion of that is being done on purpose. So they can cover up, it gives, not only do they have plausible deniability, with running through the weapons through, they tried anyway. That's why they keep covering what's going on in Benghazi up. But this now covers up when someone says, well, where'd they get the American-made weapons? Look, they ransacked Iraq, and oh my God, they took the Iraqi military stuff. And then it also, and that wouldn't, again, they don't do things just for one reason. They benefit on multiple levels. Another way is it helps destabilize that country. And now it allows them to get boots back in on the ground, which there are American boots on the ground as we speak right now in Iraq. American Marines and American soldiers on the ground, again, in Iraq. Now, what happens if one of those American Marines or one of those American soldiers gets killed? What do you think is going to happen? Oh, by the way, you think all that American military hardware came home? Oh, it did, Popeye. They brought it all back. It's here. I see the MRAPs. Oh, yeah, okay. A lot of that stuff is here. A lot of that stuff is also sitting over in Saudi Arabia and in, Kuwait. You don't think they'll just drive across that border? They've done it before. You don't think they'll do that? There's a lot of military hardware. A lot of stuff has come home, but there's a lot of hardware still sitting over there. A lot of it's been scrapped. Again, there's still a decent amount of troops and hardware sitting there. You just don't hear about that. There's a lot of stuff stationed over in the Persian Gulf. You just don't hear about it. It's moved around a little bit. So if you look at the map, oh, look, everything's done, and people see the MRAPs coming home, and people are paying attention to the MRAPs coming home, which is important too, because that's building their civilian military here, right? Militarizing the police force. But a lot of people don't realize there's still a lot of equipment sitting over there in the Middle East. They could easily send a decent amount of it right back across that border if they wanted to. So what happens when one of these boots on the ground, these Marines or these soldiers get killed? Oh, just opens up the gates. Anyway, so a lot of these people, a lot of the younger generations, which are now older, right? The generations that were people my age and maybe a little bit younger, growing up, they didn't have access to adequate food. They didn't have access to adequate education. So the mayhem and chaos that you see going on right now, where people, they join up, these groups like ISIS, which I'm going to break down ISIS a little bit for you, but people say, I don't understand, why would these young Iraqi men join this group? Well, don't they understand? I mean, we sacrificed for them. My son died over there. What did we fight and die for? Lies. That's one. I've said that about 100,000 times. I mean, maybe this is a good reality check for some people to realize. Okay? There's a lot of lies, and that's what our men and women, my brothers and sisters, died for, my friends. Okay? Lies. Well, we should have left a residual force. And done what? First of all, Obama had no choice. Everybody thinks Obama, because you see, the Obama administration took credit for it, so taking credit also allows a certain amount of blame to be thrown at them. But they didn't get us out of Iraq. Iraq told us to kick rocks We're not signing another security agreement with you. Beat it. What about all the contractors that are over there? Well, there's only about 200. Really? Maybe 200 surrounded at one base. But what? And I haven't heard about that. Whatever happened to them? The American contractors, there's 200 of them that are surrounded at a base. It's a life-threatening situation. And then nothing for like 3 days. Not a word. So is that even real? Or is that more propaganda? And there's more than 200 contractors over there. You'd think if there was a base of like 200 of them that were under assault, you don't think that they could send in like another 1,000 to go get them out? Or 500 to get them out? Send in a force twice the size? I mean, if they're contractors and they're that badass, they shouldn't have a problem, right? Or maybe they're busy here in America working for somebody else. A little sarcasm. Anyway, so over the years, we dumbed that country down. We really damaged it in many ways. So we brought it down, and that's what we needed to in order to invade it effectively. They laid siege to it almost for like 12 years, from the first Gulf War up until when we went in 2003. And then once they were in this weakened state, it was much easier for us to pound them. And Saddam wanted us to work with him, by the way. Good friend of mine here on the network, radio show host Susan Lindauer. She's been on my broadcast, 20-something times. Go back in my archives and listen. I'm going to bring Susan on again and chat with her soon. But she's got a book. She wrote all about it. She was a CIA asset. She was trying to stop this invasion. Saddam didn't want us to invade. He wanted to work with us against terrorists. He wanted to help. He was willing to give. They had lists of groups and everything. I remember, again, their intelligence services in Iraq were incredible. He had all these lists, intel, everything. He wanted to work with the American military and the government, and they told him to kick rocks. And then all of a sudden it was, we're going to invade, we're going to invade, we're going to invade. And that's what happened. We ended up invading, didn't we? And we caused chaos and mayhem. And then we took out Saddam. We took out their intelligence services. We dismantled everything that they had, which was stupid. Because if you really wanted to effectively fight terrorism, you would have left. And this has been a critique since day one when they did this. If they really wanted to effectively fight terrorism and run that country, they should have left the infrastructure, physical infrastructure, and the political infrastructure somewhat intact. They didn't. They routed everyone out, they cleaned house, and then very slowly decided who could come back in, and they only put in the people that they wanted in. Well, that left a lot of people without jobs and a lot of pissed off people that felt now like you took something that was theirs, and it created an insurgency problem, and it created more problems, and then added to that insurgency were foreign fighters. And then, of course, you also had CIA and Mossad running around causing problems and killing U.S. troops. Oh, yes. I actually wrote an article about this. If you go over to federaljack.com and you type in, I'll drop it in the chat room for the listeners, but if you type in Mossad/CIA murdered U.S. troops in Iraq, up in the search bar up at the top, up on the upper right-hand corner, right underneath the Truth Frequency Radio banner, it says search this website, type Mossad/CIA murdered U.S. troops in Iraq. And I'll drop it in the chat room link from here if anybody wants to read it. You guys can go right there. I just dropped it in the chat room for you. Okay. Go read that article. And you'll see that a lot of the sectarian violence that was going on was being fomented not only by Israel and the United States to keep the war going, because, by the way, Israel's the only country that benefited from that war. The only country. They even said it. Okay? Go look it up. But you also had them dressing up as Sunnis and Shias and going around shooting at each other, trying to foment more sectarian violence. In fact, in the article, you'll be able to take note that I mentioned, and it's a very well linked article. There's links to everything. Every once in a while, they'll take something down and kill a link for like a video that's in it. And I have to go back and fix the video, but the articles and stuff haven't been removed yet, and you can see. Back in, I forget what year it was, I want to say like probably 2004, 2005, a bunch of British troops were actually caught dressing up like Sunnis and Shias, going around shooting at just driving around shooting at random people, and then trying to inflate this violence. And the Iraqi police arrested them. And when they were arrested, the British military actually went in and broke them loose broke them loose from prison. There's pictures of it where I'm not kidding. They actually went in and had a firefight. The British military had to go in to get there, because these guys were active duty British military. They had to go in and have a firefight with the Iraqi police at the police station, because the police were like, we're not giving them up. They were running around here shooting civilians, killing people. And they said this is being done obviously to start violence and inflame violence and stuff, and this is ridiculous. And they got caught doing it, and the British military wanted them out ASAP. Of course, that makes them look bad, and I'm sure it came down from the higher ups ASAP. You need to get those guys out of there, and that's exactly what they did. They went in with tanks to break their guys out. But you got to read the rest of the article, because there's a lot of stuff in there. You'll see that there was 19 people from Zapata Engineering that opened fire on a Marine Corps checkpoint. It was either a checkpoint or one of the bases they had set up there. They opened fire on it. And, of course, the Marines caught them. And when they caught them, it's in the article that's written. You can see these are all mainstream news sources, too, I linked to, so you can see it's not like some conspiracy stuff. And the guy pulled out a Star of David and said, we're Israeli, we're Mossad, and the Marines didn't care. They beat the crap out of him and arrested him anyway, because they were opening fire on them. And it turned, it was all being done to inflame the violence. You piss the Marines off, then they send a patrol out to go see what's going on, and maybe they kill somebody, and then while they're out, they get bombed and attacked, and more Marines die, and it pisses them off, and more violence. Like a big chess game. Stay tuned. When we get back on the other side of the break, we'll get more into Iraq and ISIS. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. So, when we left off, I was explaining somewhat in detail. And by the way, again, this isn't the end-all, be-all explanation. I urge you to go do your research. When you hear me talk about stuff like this, I want you to take notes, literally. Okay? I don't come on air just to fill up 2 hours of airtime. I don't do this to hear myself speak. Trust me, I have other things I could be doing. I actually do this for your benefit and for the world's benefit, to make this world a better place and to try to spread information and knowledge. So please, when you listen to the broadcast, I urge you, take a pad, take a pen, whatever. However you take notes, your little iPad, your iPhone, however. Everybody has their own way of doing it. Take notes and do your own research. That way, you will have your Hoffman sunglasses on 24/7. You will see what Neo sees at the end of the first Matrix movie, where he sees all the code in the hallway. And he says, no. Well, everybody can achieve that, but you have to do the research yourself. I could sit here and tell you all about this stuff, but if I don't urge you to do the research yourself, I'm not really doing you any justice by any means. So please, take notes, listen to what I say, but don't believe everything just because Popeye tells you it. It doesn't make you any better than what we're doing right now with listening to what politicians do. That's why I always tell you guys to be your own superheroes. I'll give you the information. I'll show you what I know and what I have access to, and I'll give you my analysis. I understand you all respect it, and that's awesome. But I urge you to go look on your own. I don't want you to just believe it because I told you. I want you to actually go do the research, so when you see it, then it'll literally make the light bulb in your head go bing. Because I could tell you and you could believe me, but then it's really no better than listening to the politicians or anybody else, right? I always tell you be the solution. Well, part of being the solution is doing the research yourself. So, anyway. So we're 2000, 2002, 2003. Susan Lindauer, her broadcast, by the way, it's ironic I mentioned her, and then randomly the station ident plays, coming back in from the break, advertising her radio show here. So there you go, synchronicity, the universe at work, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't message the boss man, Chris Gio, and ask him to do that, so who knows, maybe that's the universe trying to remind you all. Go listen to Susan's show, go get her book, Extreme Prejudice. Susan's a great lady. She really is. It takes a lot of courage for her to do what she does. I mean, she gets messed with She's had spooky people, as she calls them, CIA spooks, spies, whatever, creeping out from behind trees in her yard at times. I've been on the phone with her chatting. So she's the real deal. I've known Susan a long time. She's the real deal. Her information is on point. Anyway, she was put in military prison because she came out and was trying to stop the Iraq War from happening. And Iraq didn't want it to happen. Okay, they knew that they couldn't fight. I mean, they put up a valiant attempt, but why do you think we were able to overthrow them so easily? Everybody's like, oh, the Iraqi military sucked. Yeah, because of the 12 years of sanctions, we laid siege to that country. If you don't understand what siege warfare is, we laid siege to Iraq for 12 years. That's what from 91 to 2003 was done. Okay, well, everybody was, living their life up and partying and, oh my God, we're not on a war footing. We're not at war anymore. Remember, we would randomly bomb stuff, and there was, they were making chemical weapons or blah. Right. We were blowing up powdered milk factories and book depositories or whatever they call them over in Iraq. You take away the knowledge and the nutrition, you make people dumb real fast. You lay siege to a country, you take away health care, you make people dumb real fast. Because they don't worry about educating themselves. They worry about surviving. So we took that country from growth mode, like Bruce Lipton would say. Growth or survival, right? Growth or protection. We put them in protection mode. We put them into that survival mode for 12 years. And then cut off their access to knowledge, cut off their access to adequate food, clean water, adequate health care. That's how you take a country down, ladies and gentlemen. We laid siege to Iraq from 1991 until 2003. And it wasn't the United States doing it. No, we had the United Nations to help push quote-unquote sanctions against this country. And who were we hurting? Were we really hurting Saddam Hussein? He still had gold-plated toilets. He was still doing whatever, living the good life. Until we invaded and then, whatever. But he was still living the good life, so to speak. So were we really hurting him? No. We were killing civilians. We were killing his population. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you want to hurt innocent people? Look at it from a military standpoint. Maybe it's because I'm former military and I can understand how they do things. I understand tactics. Maybe it's because I've studied some of this stuff. Well, a lot of it. They laid siege to Iraq for 12 years. They had the UN help them do it, while the world cheered them on. That's wizardry, ladies and gentlemen. We starved innocent children to death. Innocent women and men to death. We called it justice. It's called siege warfare. These people think in the art of the long con, the long game. Understand that. Respect that, and you'll be able to see what's going on. So, in 91, the lies, some of the lies that were used to justify, and by the way, the initial invasion, which I'm going to play an audio clip for you later. You'll hear how it's about 13 minutes long, but the guy covers a lot of stuff in it. It's from Storm Clouds Gathering, great YouTube channel. He did a good job putting this video together. I've played some of his other stuff before. He does a good job of putting this stuff together for you, in like a 13-minute package. But and I'll let him the stuff, the audio that he presents as well. You have to see the video on YouTube because there's a video component that goes along with it, which you need to see too, because you can see the physical evidence with your eyes, at least. But he does a good job of explaining the incubator baby story and everything, and who was who the famous girl was. She was I think it was the ambassador's daughter, but it was, the Iraqi military is taking Kuwaiti babies out of incubators and tossing them onto the floor so that they just die in order to kill Kuwaiti babies. And it's amazing because that kind of sick viciousness towards an innocent child is exactly the kind of thing that we did with those sanctions. You effectively did the same thing. I mean, you might not have pulled the kid out of an incubator and thrown it on the floor, but if you turn off the electricity to the incubator, and then you don't have any food or any antibiotics or anything else to give to a baby who might be sick or might have diarrhea or might need water and some other stuff and might be sick with dysentery or whatever. Oh, well, I guess it's kind of the same thing, right? So I could see where that evil, sick, twisted mentality could come up with a lie like that and feed it to a little kid to say it out loud. Because that's what they were going to eventually do, right? They were going to kill innocent little kids. So I can understand where that sick, twisted mentality comes from, that lie could be based off of. But that was the lie, amongst other things. April Gillespie told Saddam Hussein, go right ahead, you can invade Iraq, we don't care. And then like 6 days later, Bush, this will not stand, blah, 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 blah. Right. No, that wasn't on purpose. That wasn't baiting anybody into doing something, right? No. People learn history. Really. So anyway, it turned out, we know the truth, that those were all lies, right? The justification, the attack, right? The first Gulf War, of course, based on lies. But between that and the second invasion in 2003, Iraq Part 2, right? We laid siege warfare for 12 years, and that really had an effect on the healthcare, the education, the nutrition, everything. So when we went in 2003, I have a lot of friends that are like, Popeye, how stupid is the population? Well, dude, come on. The population, you guys were, it irritates me. I have friends that are like, man, we would, chuck water bottles out of the back of the Humvees at them or the deuce and a halves. There's videos of it, too. Those people are so stupid, they can't drive worth a crap, they're so dumb, they're lower than whale crap, Popeye. Guys, I understand why you'd say that a lot, but you have to also understand that those people were dumbed down on purpose. You're seeing the effect of 12 years of siege warfare. It was done so that when we went in, it was, look how easy it was for us to go in compared to other countries. And, oh my God, the American military, a mighty dash. So powerful. And yes, we do have a rather large hammer, but there was not as much military resistance as one would have thought. Because first of all, we bombed the crap out of their military. The highway of death, okay? In the first Gulf War, we blew the hell out of a good portion, 75, 80% of their military power and their military might. There wasn't much left, and then the sanctions afterwards, they couldn't repair. See, normally a country can repair and rebuild its infrastructure and its military, and you go, okay, you're going to work for us now, whatever, but you can repair and rebuild them. We wouldn't let them play ball at all for 12 years. So we weakened them. We got them to the point where they were like poor and on their knees, and then we came in and kicked them in the face and proclaimed victory. Ooh, we're tough. I know a lot of my friends might get mad at me for saying this, but come on, guys, that's not real. Yeah, there were some fierce firefights. There was stiff resistance, but that was a really uneven fight. It'd be the equivalent of taking a drunk guy on at 3 o'clock in the morning who's, 3 sheets to the wind, hallucinating, can't even barely stand up straight, trying to throw swings at you. And the guy's never even going to connect with you, let alone the 6 versions of you that are dancing around him in his vision. And instead of just maybe open-handed, giving him an open-handed shot to the chest, knocking the wind out of him, maybe slapping him open-handed, slap him across the face really hard so he knocks his head to the side, and as his head's going down, you kick his leg out from underneath him. Not like I've ever had to do this before, but maybe you 3 quick, simple moves. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. He's on the ground, on his ass, and you didn't have to split his face open or pound him because you realize, he's a little drunk. Maybe I don't have to kick his ass like that. That was the uneven fight we went into. I mean, we went in with all this technology and everything else, and they barely had powdered milk factories going. So now we're here, present day. Fast forward to 2014. And everybody's freaking out. Oh my God, ISIS, Popeye. Well, ISIS. Interesting name, by the way. Knowing the the connections to secret societies and the Egyptian mystery schools and everything else. It's very interesting how the new branch of scary boogeyman are called Isis, goddess of fertility and magic. Just, okay. Interesting name. Anyway, ISIS. Now, these guys stemmed from the Iraq Al-Qaeda branch that formed after our invasion. So, regardless of whether or not they were controlled by the CIA, and by the way, all these groups, Mossad, there's one thing that's known about Mossad is they have infiltrated all of these Arab terror groups, every single one of them. They have at least one or two people involved in them. Okay? But there are Arabs that work, like double agents for Mossad. They turn them. Okay, this is they play the same games the CIA does. Okay, and they're actually very good at it. So there's a level of, at least, even if there's not control, directly by Mossad of all the groups, there's a level of information that they have out of all these groups. And most of these groups, like at least the Al-Qaeda ones anyway, are funded and controlled by the people that created them back in the 70s. I mean, look who created Al-Qaeda. Brzezinski, Zbig himself. The big new Brzezinski. Mr. Grand Chessboard. He's got 5 books out. I suggest you read all of them to understand what's going on. He's also foreign policy advisor to Obama. I don't know if he's still active. I know he's still. Even if if he's not on the books active, you could bet your ass he goes in there and talks to Obama and sits down. Even if they make phone calls to him. Oh, and his daughter just happens to be a media talking head in the mornings on MSNBC. Oh, isn't that interesting? But that's just coincidental, Popeye. That's just coincidental that people that have influence over those in power, and doing air quotes, in power, their family is also in the media who has influence over people somewhat in power, but also over the general public. Oh, interesting how that works. Oh, but I'm a conspiracy theorist, I'm sure, because I see a connection between that. Of course, ISIS is said to be so scary that Al-Qaeda got rid of them. We have to break away from you guys. You guys are nuts. And I mean, how true that is. I mean, Al-Qaeda is controlled, so maybe they wanted to be able to. Maybe they wanted, because Al-Qaeda wasn't so scary anymore, and because the news that Al-Qaeda had been decimated, through the years of battle and everything else and fighting physically. Perhaps, was it a couple of years ago, there was a CIA assessment that said there was like less than 100 Al-Qaeda fighters in Afghanistan or something like that. So maybe Al-Qaeda is not so scary anymore. So you need a new one. But if ISIS is connected to Al-Qaeda, then it's still Al-Qaeda. And people are going to go, well, really? I mean, Al-Qaeda is controlled, blah, 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 blah. There's so much information out there about Al-Qaeda, it's almost like the names become a pop culture reference, right? So now what do I see? I see this sudden split of this group ISIS from quote-unquote Al-Qaeda, the database, which is what that means. So the CIA-controlled organization has a sect of it that is just completely off the chain, nuts, like the worst of the worst, right? And they're not so scary anymore. The CIA-controlled Al-Qaeda. So they break off of this worst of the worst branch, and they say, you guys go do your own thing. Whether the ISIS people know it or not, because now Al-Qaeda is not so scary anymore, so they kind of take a back seat. Now it's dun 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 dun, ISIS. Why do you think YouTube hasn't taken down those videos yet? I mean, YouTube used to take down videos that showed boobs and stuff. Yet there's the older beheading videos and all stuff when the Bush administration was in, and there was this big block on any of that stuff. Good luck. It might be up on YouTube briefly, but then it would get ripped down. There's some of these videos are up on YouTube for days, weeks, months. What? I understand freedom of speech and everything else, but why would they leave that up? Well, what if it was being left up on purpose to create the fear? I'm not saying ISIS is Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm and that these guys are actually great individuals and we should all go have a picnic with them. But what if they're not only being allowed to do what they do to a large extent, to create fear and a new boogeyman. But what if all of this propaganda over it? What if you being allowed to see these videos and them talking about it, Fox News? I mean, go on YouTube, type in ISIS in Iraq Stinger missiles, or ISIS has Stinger missiles, and hit enter, and you'll see like 3 or 4 different in the YouTube videos there. You'll see like 3 or 4 different videos from Fox News, at least on the first page. I think it was like 3 videos, and it was 3. One was Megyn Kelly. One was what's his name? Shepard Smith, his show. And there was another one with Greta Van Susteren. So they're all 3 on the same network, and it's all 3 the same talking point. Dun, 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 dun. ISIS has Stinger missiles now. Dun, 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 dun. They can shoot down aircraft. Well, all right, but they can only shoot down aircraft in Iraq or Syria, right? Well, what happens, Popeye, if they start shooting down American military aircraft or civilian aircraft with Americans on board? Oh, I guess that would be a justification, right, for you guys to use more military action? Put more boots on the ground, huh? Interesting. Interesting. We don't know how they got the Stinger missiles. Oh, you don't know how they got them. Well, it's from the, It's from these military bases being overrun. So it's got nothing to do with us giving weapons, funneling weapons through Benghazi, right? None of that. Oh, but we caught somebody involved with Benghazi, so don't look over there anymore. Don't look over there. We got the guy. We caught one of the rat bastards that killed our ambassador, and we're going to dish out justice. Don't you worry. The guy's either some poor sap they picked up off the street like a taxi cab driver, or some low-level accomplice they had, and they're like, time to send you up the river. Because that's what they do. But that's to take the heat off the whole Benghazi situation. And, of course, notice that comes out. Notice, see how things are timed very interesting? Just at an interesting pace. It's synchronicity. Okay, not all the time. Sometimes, a lot. When it comes to politics, nothing happens by happenstance. Anyway, they capture this guy, and then within the few days of them capturing this baddie, ISIS is invading, positions in Iraq and taking American military weapons. Interesting. And now you hear people saying, well, where did they get these American-made weapons? Oh, when they took over these military bases and these different positions in these cities. Really? You don't think they had any American military weapons beforehand? I mean, there's videos of the insurgents fighting in Syria with military weapons. We've admitted that we've backed them to a certain degree, but we haven't given them really any weapons. But we should give them weapons, but we haven't given them weapons yet. Right. When you see John McCain coming on TV and saying, we should give this group of freedom fighters weapons, they're already doing it. Just so you know. When you see McCain or Lindsey Graham, or when they used to roll out Lieberman when he was still in politics, what would they do? The 3 of them would do the Sunday morning shows, and oh my God, we need bombs in this country, we need to send arms to this country. Now McCain's still the one that does it. He goes and has photo ops with terrorists. Well done, John. Well done. Why don't you get another fighter jet and drop another munition on the deck of another aircraft carrier while you're at it, you jack off. USS Forrestal. Look it up. McCain's a traitor. That guy should be tried for treason and then taken out back immediately, not put in jail, taken out back to the gallows with the rest of them. Because he'd be found guilty. There wouldn't be any, unless, of course, it was a totally bought-off jury. That's why you'd need, like, a jury of people that were not in any way connected to Washington and that nobody could have known who the hell they were. You have to figure out a way to do it. It could be done. We'd have to figure out a way to do it, but it could be done. That guy should be tried for treason, without a doubt, on multiple levels. How about ignoring the POWs, John? What POWs? Right. Don't get me started. I've done shows about this. Anyway, terrorist-loving scumbag. Senator John McCain. Senator John, terrorist-loving Scumbag McCain. That should be his new slogan. John McCain, because I support terrorism. Was he from Arizona, right? People need to vote him out. And if everybody does vote him out and he still gets in, that like nobody votes for him, he still gets in, you guys need to look into a little thing called vote fraud. I mean, that's easily done. Anyway, so now we have a new boogeyman. Right? And the reason I gave you the fast forward to ISIS is because I wanted to cover ISIS because I knew we had a limited amount of time coming up for hour 2. We're going to get into why I think this is going on in hour 2. And I'm going to play that clip from Storm Clouds Gathering for you and give you a little bit more of an analysis of it. But anyway, so now we have the ISIS boogeyman. Ooh. A couple days ago, there was no boots on the ground. No airstrikes, nothing. It's the Iraqi government's problem. Now we have boots on the ground. Possible airstrikes. They're moving ships close. How much more money is going to be spent? Problem. Reaction. Solution. The reaction part was him golfing and not doing anything for a couple days. 4. Oh, I got a bit of a slice on that one. The problem? Iraqi military units being overrun and their military crumbling and being overrun by insane jihadists. And their leader, he was released from Guantanamo. A lot of people were like, you see? Or wait, was it, no, it wasn't Guantanamo. Was it Camp Bucca he was released from? It was either Bucca? I don't think he was from Gitmo. I think he was from Bucca. Yeah, he was from Camp Bucca. He told the guards when he left, when they let him out in 2009, see you in New York. And now the Fox News and CNN, oh my God, could they be attacking in New York? They have Stinger missiles. Be afraid, be afraid. Fear, ISIS is in your closet now. Al-Qaeda's gone and it's ISIS. You see where this is going? Just when people are bitching about MRAPs on the street, the police state, the militarized police, the behavior of the police, the spying and everything, and they always tell you it's for terrorism, it's for terrorism. And we say, yeah, you haven't caught anybody, and blah, 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 and we defeat their arguments all the time. Now you have a new boogeyman. Bin Laden's dead. Al-Qaeda's kind of on the back shelf. Now you've got ISIS. Ugh.
This is Sparta!
Stay tuned. We'll get more into ISIS and the Iraq chaos in hour 2. You can bet your rear end they're going to try to use this as an excuse to clamp down more security. Oh my God! You see, the new threat is ISIS. Is your neighbor a member of ISIS? Film at 11. Stay tuned. Ignore the fear porn. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. Tonight I'm going over the chaos that we see enveloping Iraq yet again, the sectarian violence, the civil war. So in hour 1, I went over a bit of a history lesson. If you didn't hear it, go back and listen to it. Try to help you guys understand what the 12-year time period between 91 and 2003 really was for Iraq. Siege warfare, from us to them, with the world cheering it on, children dying. Ugh. Madeleine Albright said, well, we think the cost is worth it. Don't worry, you'll hear that clip. We think the cost is worth it. She was asking all these children dying from the sanctions. You think this is really a good thing? Well, we think the cost is worth it. So children dying is acceptable. Well, I didn't say that. Yes, you did. You just didn't have to say children dying is acceptable. You said, we think the cost is worth it. Yeah. That means that if you were told that children are dying and you said, well, it's worth it, that means it's acceptable that children die in your eyes. Politician would say, well, those words never came out of my mouth. No, they don't have to. That's how they play games. Well, I never said that. Yeah, you never said that. Oh, these people are such war criminals. They really are. Such turds. George H.W. Bush, it was his birthday last week. Look, he jumped out of a helicopter. Oh, isn't that sweet? The 90-year-old retired president and war hero jumped out of a helicopter. Too bad someone didn't cut the straps. Guy jumping with him tandem should have just unbuckled them. President Bush, whisper in his ear. He's going, now, President Bush, have a nice landing. Clip. Ah! Less evil in the world. Ugh. Fox News and everybody, oh my God, it's so great. Yeah, evil turned 90 and he's jumping out of a helicopter. Yay! Let's all worship evil. Disgusting. Anyway, so to understand what's going on now, we're going to go back again. Now that I jumped, I gave you the history lesson of the invasion and everything until we occupied. Then I hopped up to ISIS. Now we're going to go back again between when we were occupiers and we were forming the government until now. So during this time, there's a lot of sectarian problems. There was violence even when our troops were still there, and for the large part, our troops were pretty much involved in the following after the invasion. Once we were occupiers, it was more so being involved in a civil war. And their response, yes, were there would be people battling. Maybe the Kurds would come in and get in a battle, or maybe they'd have to deal if they went to a certain part of the country. Maybe initially, a lot of stuff was done so that they didn't have to fight with the Kurds, or they didn't have to fight with other people. They were trying, to a certain extent, not to have to fight with every different sect. And yes, they might have eventually during warfare. You might have ended up fighting, somebody from every group, but the main two groups that they were dealing with were the Sunnis and the Shias, which this is like Sunni versus Shia. This is thousands of years old, right? So, in the total Muslim world, most of them are made up of Sunnis. Like 87, 89% of the Muslim world is Sunnis. And then something like 11 or 12% are the Shia. So, in Iraq, Saddam Hussein, they were all Sunnis. Okay, when they got the Sunni government out, when they did this de-Baathification, one of the things that they did was they created this Shia dominant government, which really seemed to piss off because the Shia are minority, and they seem to piss off the local Sunnis, and the people that, of course, there's more to it. It's not just that, but this was a big part of it. And by the way, they knew this. Okay, they absolutely 100% knew that this was going on. Even if Bush didn't, he's not the one that was making the decisions. He's a muppet. We all know this. And they were told that this was going to happen. You don't think they wanted it to happen? They did it to inflame the problems, right? So you already had this very hardcore distrust of the Shia government, the Shia controlled government in Iraq, of the Sunni population. Now ISIS, they're Sunnis. Okay, if you want to break it down to Sunni, Shia, Kurds, and there's one other one I can't remember, at least off the top of my head that I can remember. Anyway, they're Sunnis. Okay, and the government of Iraq are Shia. So you could see civil war between the two of them already. They're fighting. And we helped create this. Like, they were told, maybe you should mix it up. Have Sunni, Shia, Sunni, Shia, Sunni, Shia in there. No. We made it a prominently Shia government in Iraq, which is really bad because we knew this was going to happen. People told them, you're going to have problems. Maybe you shouldn't do this. No. I mean, even politicians that were willing to work with them in Iraq were trying to tell them, hey, no. We know everything. We know better. The neocons, Paul Bremer, and all these other JOs. Yeah, they all know better. Okay, of course, they can't tell them what their real goal is. They can't say that their real goal is destabilization and everything else, and how they're going to go about it over the course of time. So they get this government in, and remember, we thought that their government was going to play ball, Maliki and all these other people. Well, over the course of time, he has been playing ball and doing everything the U.S. wants, right? They wouldn't allow us to keep the troops in there, everything else. So, that's another reason, by the way, why our government would go, oh, yeah, okay, well, let him get taken out of power, and then they can go in, they can bomb the hell out of these people, and then, maybe Maliki won't be the president anymore. Maybe they'll say, well, you have to step down and we'll put somebody else in. And it'll be another puppet that they control, and that'll say, yes, sir, no, sir, whatever you want, sir. You tell them to jump, and they'll say, how high? And that's part of what I see going on. Anyway, So over the years, they're having problems with, militant groups, and a lot of the problems, again, a lot of the sectarian violence was this Sunni versus Shia. So, and of course you do have, you get the now they have Al-Qaeda over there, so you get that, you get the CIA, Mossad, intelligence services fomenting violence too. So you'd have to look at each case and then see the particulars of each case if you're going to file them away as, real civil war event or fomented violence by a third, state, a third party state. So you'd have to go through them. But you get the drift. You understand. So ISIS, this thing with ISIS is not new. Okay, by the way, because all this time they're having problems. Back in January, Fallujah got taken over by ISIS. January, it's June. I know they both start with a J, but they're 6 months apart. So we shouldn't be surprised, and our intelligence agencies, I'm doing air quotes, should not be surprised that this was going on or happening. They knew about this. That's actually one of the talking points that Fox and the faux conservatives and the neocons are like, see, we need to go back in. We need to park 50,000 troops. I don't think anybody actually said that yet, but I'm just waiting. We need to put 50,000 troops back in. 100,000, screw it. Send them all back over. And Blackwater contractors. Salivating at the idea of sending troops back into Iraq. These people are, it's disgusting. So, anyway. You had the Sunni versus Shia thing. By the way, the funders of ISIS, the people funding it, a lot of them, now they've taken over banks and stuff. So now, they've literally just robbed banks. So now they have tons of money. But a lot of the money that has been funding them, and probably will continue to fund them, even though they stole all this money from Iraqi banks, is Saudi Arabia. They're Sunnis. Oh, interesting fact. The 9/11 hijackers were Sunnis. Oh, they're all connected. 9/11 hijackers, ISIS, connection to Al-Qaeda, connection to Saudi Arabia. Wow. Maybe Saudi Arabia is the problem, huh? Maybe we should have bombed Saudi Arabia and invaded Saudi Arabia instead of Iraq. Oh, that's right. We work with them. This is all a sham and lies. So it's actually, see, if you look at the story the way they actually tell you, and you look at it with some common sense, and you know this stuff, you're going to be like, wow. But either they're lying or they're really stupid. Well, it's not the really stupid part. They're lying. So anyway, I bring that up, the 9/11 hijacker thing, because this piece of 9/11 mythology, I like to point this out. You know the red headbands that the terrorists were supposedly wearing when they took over the airplanes? You look at the movie Flight 93, and the stories from Flight 93, they say that they're putting on they're guys with red headbands and blah, 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 and they're taking over the plane, they're terrorists, blah, blah. Red headbands aren't a Sunni adornment, they're a Shia adornment. Why would Sunnis wear, hardcore, if these were real religious Sunnis, why would they be wearing a head adornment that their mortal enemy would wear? They don't like the Shia. Why would they put a Shia red band on their head? Go look it up. Somebody in the Bush administration, when they made up that version, when they wrote out the script, they effed up. They probably didn't understand the subtle differences between Sunni and Shia. A little bit of research will show you. The red headband tied around the head. Go watch the Flight 93 movie when they first hijack it. You'll see the hijackers with the red headband. That's a Shia adornment. The 9/11 hijackers were Sunnis. People should pay attention to details. As I've said to you before, the devil is in the details. The minutia is not important, Popeye. Ooh, the minutia is extremely important, ladies and gentlemen, because when you understand, if just understanding one simple fact that the head adornment, they wouldn't wear it. That would be akin to a black guy putting on a Klan robe. If you want to understand the hatred between the two different groups, that would be the equivalent of a black dude walking around with a Klan robe and a hood on. For fun. Or, believing it. Or rocking it. How many black guys do you think would go around rocking a Klan hood and a white robe? I don't know many. Can't say as I can name off even one. Do you think a group that's hated each other for thousands of years, one day they're just going to hijack planes and be like, we're Al-Qaeda. Well, Popeye, maybe they were trying to blame the Shia. Really? Really? If you believe the official version, Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden took the blame for it, right? Which is not true, but okay, Al-Qaeda took the blame for it. Well, anybody that knows Al-Qaeda would understand that they're Sunni. So that whole argument of, well, maybe they were trying to frame the Shia doesn't fit. What does fit is somebody who wrote the narrative didn't pay attention to the details and didn't understand the difference between the Sunni and the Shia. Probably one of the problems of invading Iraq, too, because they really didn't think about the differences between the Sunni and the Shia, did they? Or about civil war. Now, I'm sure they did to a certain extent, but a lot of that was probably put on the back burner. Yes, they knew it was going to destabilize the country, but to a certain extent, they don't care because there was this rush to get into this war and invade. I mean, they didn't even think about the aftermath, rebuilding. Remember all the bitching? Oh my God, none of you thought about rebuilding or anything. It was all invasion, kill, and bomb, but nothing about what are you going to do afterwards. Same thing with the veterans' health care. They didn't even give the invading forces armored Humvees. The original force that went in, you see all these up-armored Humvees now, that came about after the engineering divisions in the Marine Corps and the Army and in the Air Force and even Navy they were cutting huge chunks of metal up and welding them, making doors out of them, welding hinges and everything on. And the engineering divisions were awesome. These guys were making armor so their friends wouldn't come back dead. Because they were using, you know what the doors were made out of in most of the Humvees in the initial invasion? Canvas. Yeah, that stops high-velocity rounds real well. It's that bulletproof canvas. It's got that invisible shield over it, Popeye. You just couldn't see it. How many people needlessly died because of that? But we got to go. It's important. We got to go to war. Iraq's going to get us chemical munitions. Oh, my God. Oh, man, it's all a lie. Where are the weapons of mass destruction? Oh, they're not there. Oh, the country was actually falling apart and its infrastructure was a freaking joke. Water pumps seized. Electric plants not working in years because they don't have parts for the generators, because they couldn't machine any more parts because they needed certain things from the manufacturer and they couldn't get it because of the sanctions. We crippled this country from 91 until we invaded, and then the invasion really did it in. And then we tried to set up some puppet government, and, of course, they wanted to leave troops and everything in there. But even if the troops were there, this still could have happened. Now, can you imagine if our troops were there, and this happened right now? They were still in the country? I mean, I know there's boots back on the ground. He used the War Powers Act the other day, but can you imagine if there were still troops in the country? This wouldn't have happened if there were troops in the country. Bullshit. We could have stopped them with airstrikes from Predator drones. Well, it's Iraq's problem. Oh, wait. Suddenly it's Iraq's problem? We don't have a problem invading Libya and fighting for the rebels there. Okay? We don't have a problem. We need airstrikes in Syria. We got to fight the Syrian government for the rebels, Al-Qaeda, right? We don't have a problem with that. No, we got money for that. We got plenty of missiles and people to go die and fight for that, right? That's okay. They did bomb Libya, and they were trying and still are trying to bomb Syria. But then the country that you invade and spend billions, with a frigging B, billions, not only on that dumbass embassy that's like the size of 80 football fields, it's a city in and of itself, not just the embassy, the city embassy, right? But they spend billions of dollars and countless lives training and creating this Iraqi military. And then it crumbles. And they go, well, if we had left the troops in there, convenient-ass excuse. Perhaps if you guys had used your drones, which you don't have a problem bombing people in Yemen or Pakistan, which technically we're not even at war with. That's a war crime. So, you don't have a problem bombing, goat herders and sheep and kids in Pakistan or Afghanistan or Yemen. And it's not like you're fighting it's not like in Libya when the Libyan forces, whatever you want to call them, the Libyan army, whatever, they were Gaddafi's forces, when they were hiding their stuff inside of buildings and stuff, they made it a little harder for you. ISIS is not even attempting to hide their movement. I mean, the most basic of satellite images of the Middle East, if you zoom in, right? with their technology, you could see the dust trails and everything. It's not like they can't figure out, well, we don't want to hit civilians. What? Wait. What? We don't want collateral damage? You have no problem launching drone strikes, blowing things up. How about the collateral damage video that WikiLeaks released where you shot a bunch of reporters that weren't terrorists at all, and after you killed a bunch of reporters and cameramen, a van full of civilians comes up with kids in it that trying to help the injured, and they get lit up too. Light them up! Remember the infamous WikiLeaks gunship video? Collateral Murder, I think it's titled, on YouTube. But we're worried about innocent people. Bullshit. How about the innocent kids that you blow up in Afghanistan every day? Or the innocent people you blow up in Pakistan every day? Well, they're terrorists. Really, that 14-year-old kid herding sheep. Yeah, he was a real terrorist. That wedding party. Ooh, terrorism. But you don't want to go fight in Iraq? Oh, it's Iraq's problem. And I'm not saying that we should go in. But don't you see the hypocrisy? They want to get involved in everybody else's backyard, but in the country's backyard that we created a mess, they could have stopped this momentum a week ago. Iraq said, come in with drone strikes. They could have flown a couple Predators right over, no problem, fly them over, look down from their cameras. It's not like you can't see where ISIS is. I mean, these guys are driving around in huge lines. If you look from space, you'd be like, damn, that's a nice parade line. Boom, 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 boom. We didn't seem to have a problem bombing the highway of death in the 90s. And that was actually military. Not that they were really trying to hide. I mean, you could see them. Well, we can't distinguish ISIS from civilian targets. You're lying. It was being done on purpose. Why was it being done? Because, as I said earlier, I think, A, obviously, because these things are never done for one reason, it helps destabilize the country, okay? But it also enables them to get more weapons into the hands of the Syrians, or the Syrian rebels, the Al-Qaeda, ISIS in Syria, right? Al-Qaeda in Syria. It allows them to, they're getting Abrams tanks and Humvees, and I mean, they're now driving American military equipment around. Al-Qaeda. That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, great. So it allows them to get weapons and bring it into Syria and help fight in Syria, right? Cause more chaos. Maybe win that fight, right? Because so far Assad's government, with some help from Iran, has been able to push that back, and Russia's been giving them munitions and stuff. So that's part of it. But it also covers Benghazi, because now if someone says, well, how the hell did they get American military and American-made weapons then? They can easily say, well, they got it from when they overran these bases and these positions and guard positions in Iraq. The military took off. So ISIS came in and they just took all these weapons. We couldn't do anything. You couldn't circle a Predator. They were watching from Predators anyway. You don't think they had Predators watching? You don't think one of those Predators had a Hellfire missile on it? They always are armed. Let me explain something. They might not arm yet the Predators over the United States, but when they're over Iraq or the Middle East, every time one of those Predators goes up, even if it's on surveillance, they have missiles on them. If they tell you otherwise, unless it's completely just a surveillance mission and they don't want to have it, I would say 98% of the times, though, if not all of it, they have missiles on it. On the off chance, they go, oh, snap. We want to kill that. They don't want to have to go, oh, well, we'll send another Predator up, or we'll send a bomber up. Sometimes they have to. They'll just have the Predator flying around. Maybe they'll have an F-16 come overhead. A lot of times they can just send the Predator up. Hellfire missiles. Oh, look. Boom. Yay, we got a terrorist. Yay. It's like playing a video game. Yay. Probably blew up a sheep herder and his kids. They're full of it. We don't want collateral damage. Right, you don't want collateral damage. You don't have a problem killing kids in other countries. Suddenly, you don't want collateral damage. You could easily figure out where the ISIS positions are. Come on. The Iraqi government knows where they are. They're hitting them with helicopter gunfire and rockets. You're going to tell me we can't fly around in a drone and find this stuff with the technology we have? We don't know. Really? We don't know? Really? Really? You expect me to believe that? Really? Really? We couldn't bomb any of these positions? I'm not saying we need to be wasting money and everything else, but if you look at it that you're concerned about the fall of Iraq and the fall of Baghdad, which, I mean, we should be trying to stop. And if there's anything we should try to stop, it's these guys, right? Maybe it's the ex-military men, but those guys need to be stopped. I know they're controlled, but if, from my viewpoint, right, again, I understand it being allowed to happen, but if you really don't want, I mean, if Baghdad fell to these people, the price of oil is already going up by speculators because of this. You think the price of oil won't triple here? And you don't think that stuff will affect us here? It will. You don't think that'll affect us later on, perhaps with some blowback or more problems in the future? Oh, it could. Because, I mean, a lot of these people they're real. You only have to control the leaders. The ground troops you don't have to control. I mean, that's for their leaders to control. So the CIA, Mossad, they only control certain people in the food chain. But a lot of their fighters are genuine. They'll die and, kill for their beliefs and their leaders' beliefs. I mean, we're creating a big problem. We're allowing a hornet's nest to get worse. And a lot of people are very war-weary, which is good. Of course, now you have the media saying, have we overcorrected? No, we haven't overcorrected. Not at all. But we should be paying attention to what's going on. I'm not saying we should be putting boots on the ground or anything like that. But, look, they could have stopped this ISIS crap months ago. They knew 6 months ago that they were in Fallujah. So I'm pointing this out because I'm trying to explain to you it's being done on purpose. There is no logical reason that this should have happened. Well, we were surprised by the collapse of the Iraqi military. I'm more surprised by the fact that nothing was done. Not a thing, even when Iraq asked for help. And then everybody's surprised that Iran wants to get involved. Well, they don't want these idiots on their doorstep. They don't want that. And if I remember correctly, the Iranians are Shia. Or the majority of the population of Iran is Shia. So they're coming to their fellow Shia defense. Look, this has the opportunity to create like World War III. And you have things going on in Russia. Now you have the tension in the Middle East. You have Iran coming in. 3 brigades of the Quds forces in Iraq fighting these insurgents and killing them already, right now, fighting ISIS for Iraq. And of course, the neocons, we shouldn't be partnering with Iran at all. They're the enemy, the devil, right? Because you guys are actually wanting to not only rout ISIS, but then use this as an excuse to go after Iran too. Because this is all part of the plan, the destabilization, the going after the different countries. You have to understand all of this to see what's going on. Now, my personal feelings, I think if we don't have a problem dropping bombs from drones in all these other countries, we technically, perhaps we should have stopped the advance of these guys a while ago. Do I agree that maybe we should hit ISIS targets now? I'd have to see, I'd have to be privy to intelligence and stuff. I really can't give an answer to that. But, I mean, to a certain extent, should we allow this to happen? I don't know. It's a good question. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. So going into the break, I asked, should we get involved? Well, I don't think we should be putting boots on the ground, but, we could have done a couple drone strikes. Maybe even sent in some AC-130 Spectre gunships. I'm sure there's a couple still sitting over in Kuwait somewhere. We could have sent them in a while ago to pound certain, if we really wanted to help the Iraqi government. There could have been talks with them. We could have reached out, oh my God, this is a legitimate threat. Even a week ago, we could have slowed their advance. I mean, they're driving down huge dirt roads. There are highways. Well, I don't want to say dirt roads, but highways out in the middle of nowhere, dirt land, middle of BFE Iraq in certain areas. There's nothing on either side. You're going to tell me that even for a 5-minute period, you only need 30 seconds. You have that drone hovering around for hours. You only need a 30-second window, maybe 45, to park a Hellfire in the right spot. You're going to tell me you couldn't find a 5 or 10-minute window while these morons were driving in huge caravans, straight lines, kicking up all sorts of dust and dirt that you can see from outer space, okay, with the right optics. You're going to tell me you couldn't park a Hellfire missile or two on this column and stop it in its tracks? Maybe slow down scary ISIS? No. You could have. So the fact that they didn't says a lot. I mean, if they really are that bad, if they're that scary and that much of a national security threat, because you watch now the next, they're gonna amp that threat up. By the way, the guy where he was leaving Bucha and he said to the MPs, "I'll see you in New York." He said, now even the head, I think he was a lieutenant or whatever he was, he said, or lieutenant commander, whatever the hell he was, he said they interviewed the guy about that comment, and he said, well, you know, I thought about it, and, you know, at the time I didn't take it as a threat because he knew that they were, if I remember correctly, they were a reservist unit out of Long Island. So he knew that they were from New York. So he didn't take it as we're going to attack New York again. But the mainstream media took that little tidbit, that little headline, and man, did they run with it for a whole day. Does that mean they're going to attack New York? And then today, what do you see? Dun-dun-dun, on Fox News, the Neocon channel, dun-dun-dun, they've got Stinger missiles. What could happen if we send in American aircraft? Could our American, because remember, they're talking about sending in Ospreys, right? With Marines. What happens if one of those Ospreys with a bunch of Marines gets taken out by one of these ISIS guys with a Stinger and they kill a bunch of Marines? Maybe they take out 2 or 3 of them. They kill 20, 30, 40 Marines. You think the Marine Corps is going to be happy if nothing is done about that? Do you think the American public is going to be happy if 30, 40 Marines got killed? God forbid that happens. You know, I'll knock on wood right here that it doesn't happen. But do I understand how evil these bastards are? Oh, yeah. Do I think that they would allow an Osprey filled with Marines or 2 of them to get shot down to justify putting more boots on the ground? Yes, I do. Do I think that they'll try to tell you that these scary ISIS guys are going to come and bring the Stinger missiles to a state near you and shoot airplanes out of the sky? Sure. I'm willing to bet they're going to say that next. And by the way, that could have, I mean, if real terrorists wanted to take down planes in this country, that's all they'd have to do. You could easily pull over in a van on the side of the highway, hop out with a shoulder-fired weapon, and shoot down any plane coming. You wouldn't have to even go up by TSA. So that whole thing it's all security theater. It's a farce. And now, they know that, by the way, and now they can play that card. Oh my God, they might bring Stinger missiles here and use them. Wait till that comes out. The first question you should ask if they actually bring that little gem out is this. How in the hell are they, meaning ISIS, going to get Stinger missiles into the country? Across the border. Explain that to me. Explain. How do you think they're going to get Stinger missiles across our borders? Through customs. Maybe via that wide open border in the south. Maybe Border Patrol is so overwhelmed they could sneak one of the little boys in. Of course, their guys would be here already, right? They would already have them trained. They would have brought them in on an airplane. They would have come through customs with a passport provided by the State Department. Are you kidding me? That's how they do it. But I mean, maybe if you thought they were going to smuggle it across the Rio Grande or the wide open southern border, maybe that's the only spot that you could, a skeptic could say, well, maybe they could get it in there. But honestly, come on, we know how they do it. A Stinger would probably come from a military base. You got to be driven on to go get it with a van and, you know, passes and IDs and everything else. So now they're putting the idea out there that, oh my God, scary ISIS is going to bring, you know, Stingers here and they could take down aircraft. Oh my God, a Stinger is powerful enough to take down an aircraft. Yeah, that's why they're called anti-aircraft missiles. Genius. That's what they're for. They're shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles. They're powerful enough to take down an aircraft. Thank you, Megyn Kelly, for that awesome analysis of what a Stinger missile is powerful enough to do, considering it's called a surface-to-air missile. I would venture a guess that that's exactly what it was intended for, since airplanes are the only thing I could think of that we'd be shooting out of the sky unless we were taking on aliens, and then I guess you would call it a surface-to-UFO missile? Right? Surface-to-alien missile? I guess you could still call it surface-to-air because they'd be floating around, but I digress. You get my point. Certain key words are used by the media to scare the crap out of you, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my God, scary ISIS, scary Al-Qaeda. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Problem, reaction, solution. The problem, ISIS. The reaction, I'm going to go golfing. 4. And then 3 days later, the solution, more military involvement in Iraq. And now that you've got American boots on the ground by the Obama using the War Powers Act, now that you have American boots on the ground, advisors, I love how they use that word. Yeah, that's what they called them in Vietnam too. Now that you have American boots on the ground, what happens when one of those Americans is killed? Or 2 of them? There's going to be an outrage and a call in the media and by our government to do something about it. And then the president's going to say, it's my job as the president to keep our men and women safe. Therefore, I am sending in 10,000 Marines, or 5,000 Marines and 10,000 U.S. Army soldiers. And they're going to, conveniently, they're sitting in Kuwait, or in aircraft carriers parked right out in the Persian Gulf. And then, as I said, maybe when the Marines are coming in, they'll shoot something down, one of the Ospreys or something, and then it'll be, we need more, and then cruise missiles. Now the new war will be ISIS. Dun, 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 dun. And as I said, you should look up ISIS and mythology and the Egyptian mystery schools and everything else. Do a little Bill Cooper homework. Read yourself some books. Actually, if you want to learn a lot about it, you could go listen to the Mystery Babylon series. If you want to do audio while you're doing something else, if you can't read, but you should read. I mean, that's the best thing you can do is read and educate yourself. Anyway, I'm going to leave myself a few minutes at the end of the broadcast, but I want to get this clip, as I said. I want to play this clip from Storm Clouds Gathering. They do a great job of putting video presentations together. You should go check them out on YouTube. But they did a good job. The video is titled The Fall of Iraq, What You're Not Being Told. I will post it up on federaljack.com, but I want to play the audio in full for you all right now. Like I said, it's about 13 minutes. I'm going to leave myself a few minutes to pontificate at the end. And then I'll say goodnight to all of you. And as I said, I expect all of you to do your homework and keep researching this. Anyway, The Fall of Iraq, What You Aren't Being Told by Storm Clouds Gathering.
Iraq is descending into chaos, but not for the reasons you're being fed by the politicians and the mainstream media. In June of 2014, the world watched in shock as an Islamic militant group operating under the name of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, took control of Mosul, Baiji, and Tikrit and began pushing south to Baghdad. Fallujah has been under their control since January. Iraqi military and police put up very little resistance in spite of the fact that they greatly outnumbered the militants. Most fled their posts and left their uniforms and weapons behind. Those who didn't were killed. ISIS, whose stated goal is to erase the border between Syria and Iraq, to establish an Islamic caliphate encompassing both countries, and to impose Sharia law, already holds vast swaths of territory, and they are rapidly gaining ground. How did this happen? That's an extremely important question. How you answer it will determine what comes next, not just in Iraq. That's why the media spin doctors and politicians are out in force, attempting to rewrite history and turning reality completely on its head in the process. For example, we have people insisting that this is happening because the US and NATO failed to intervene in Syria. Well, that's a convenient answer, isn't it? The US and NATO have been actively working to topple Assad by arming and funding the Syrian rebels since at least 2011. This has developed into a bloody civil war which has attracted jihadists from all over the world. It has also created a vacuum of power which enabled groups like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and al-Nusra to organize and establish physical strongholds. The U.S. claims to only be arming the moderate rebels. However, the leadership of the Free Syrian Army, aka the FSA, has stated that they regularly carry out joint operations with Al-Qaeda and its affiliates. Up until recently, ISIS was a branch of Al-Qaeda. In February of this year, Al-Qaeda's official leadership publicly disavowed ISIS due to their brutal tactics. That's why ISIS is referred to as a splinter group. Furthermore, we know for a fact that the majority of the weapons and funding from the U.S. and its allies are ending up in the hands of jihadists, and U.S. officials have been aware of this since 2012. But don't take my word for it. Go read this article from the New York Times yourself. Do the math, folks. ISIS would have never gotten a foothold in Syria if the U.S. hadn't weakened the Syrian government, and the weapons that they're using right now were most likely paid for with your tax dollars. But wait, this isn't just about Syria, is it? It's also about Iraq. Which brings us to the other deranged narrative that's being promoted right now. That this chaos is unfolding because the U.S. military withdrew prematurely in 2011. You see, Iraq is in ruins and unable to defend itself because the U.S. military left the party too early. It's not because the Bush administration and the mainstream media convinced the public that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction and was planning to use them. No, and it's not because the U.S. invaded Iraq under these false pretenses, disbanding the Iraqi army and police and reducing the country to rubble in an attempt to put down the resulting insurgency. No, it's because 8 years of military occupation wasn't enough. Those who fought there, it's a punch in the gut to see your sacrifice was for nothing. But the occupation of Iraq was never going to end well. And the Bush administration knew that it wouldn't. But don't take my word for it. Let's take a look at this clip, Dick Cheney, from 1994.
Do you think the U.S. or UN forces should have moved into Baghdad?
No.
Why not?
Because if we'd gone to Baghdad, we would have been all alone. There wouldn't have been anybody else with us. It would have been a U.S. occupation of Iraq. None of the Arab forces that were willing to fight with us in Kuwait were willing to invade Iraq. Once you got to Iraq and took it over and took down Saddam Hussein's government, then what are you going to put in its place? That's a very volatile part of the world, and if you take down the central government in Iraq, you can easily end up seeing pieces of Iraq fly off. Part of it the Syrians would like to have to the west. Part of eastern Iraq, the Iranians would like to claim fought over for 8 years. In the north, you've got the Kurds, and if the Kurds spin loose and join with the Kurds in Turkey, then you threaten the territorial integrity of Turkey. It's a quagmire if you go that far and try to take Iraq.
That was very astute, Dick. You accurately predicted the mess that you were going to help create in 2003. I would even venture to say that your predictions were more accurate than those who warned against this adventure. I'm impressed. Now you'll notice that the talking heads at the left and the right are both trying to frame this crisis as the fault of the other side. They're both right. Both sides of the aisle have blood on their hands, and this goes way beyond Bush and Obama. The United States has been tinkering in Iraq for a long, long time. In fact, it was the CIA that put Saddam in power in 1963. Don't take my word for it. Go read this article from the New York Times. The U.S. government also backed Saddam in 1980 when he launched a war of aggression against Iran, even though they knew he was using chemical weapons. But again, don't take my word for it. Go read this article by Foreign Policy magazine. Fast forward to 1990. Saddam Hussein was embroiled with Kuwait over oil prices and borders, and he was preparing to take action. Given America's support in the war against Iran, Saddam had no reason to believe that Kuwait would be any different. But just to be sure, he decided to consult with Washington first. On July 25th of 1990, U.S. Ambassador to Iraq, April Glaspie, met with Saddam Hussein. In the meeting, Saddam described his case against Kuwait and told Glaspie that he viewed their activities as an act of military aggression. Glaspie responded by saying, quote, "We have no opinion on Arab-Arab conflicts like your border disagreement with Kuwait." And she reinforced this by saying, "This issue is not associated with America." Naturally, Saddam interpreted this as a green light. 8 days later, he invaded. Later, when questioned in hearings, Glaspie claimed that though this quote was accurate, she had followed it up by insisting that Iraq settle its dispute nonviolently.
Did you say we have no opinion on the Arab-Arab conflicts, like your border disagreement with Kuwait?
Yes, that was one part of my sentence. The other part of my sentence was, but we insist that you settle your disputes with Kuwait non-violently.
However, that's not what shows up in the transcripts of the conversation released by the New York Times. According to the transcript, what she actually said was, "All that we hope is that these issues are solved quickly." But maybe this was just an innocent diplomatic blunder, right? Well, not quite. As soon as Saddam entered Kuwait, the U.S. government launched a very interesting propaganda campaign to build up public support for a war. They claimed that Iraqi troops were slaughtering little babies by throwing them out of their incubators in hospitals. And they brought in teary-eyed witnesses who testified to having seen the massacres.
While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers coming to the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
I myself carried 14 newborn babies that had been taken from their incubators.
Kids in incubators, and they were thrown out of the incubators so that Kuwait could be systematically dismantled.
Just one little problem. The entire event was fabricated. It never happened. This woman who presented herself as a witness was actually the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States, and her testimony was part of a public relations campaign organized by a company called Hill and Knowlton. Once public support for the war was strong, the incubator story was dropped, never mentioned again. The U.S. invaded Iraq in 1991. During that war, the U.S. military utilized approximately 640,000 pounds of depleted uranium ammunition. Iraq was decimated, but the U.S. left Saddam in power. The war didn't ever really end, though. The U.S. kept Iraq under a draconian sanctions regime that resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of children. Clinton kept those sanctions in place for the entire duration of his presidency, and they knew what was happening.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know,
This is the Madeleine Albright interview. Stopping it for a second to tell you this. This is the Madeleine Albright interview I mentioned earlier. Listen to what she says.
The price worth it? I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
You know how they say that those who don't know history are destined to repeat it? That's really not an exaggeration. Fast forward to 2003, and the Kuwait incubator story was swapped out for stories of mobile missile silos and yellow cake uranium. And when it turned out that those weapons of mass destruction didn't exist, they acted like it was no big deal. Then, of course, came Obama, riding in on promises of hope and change. But we saw how Obama toppled Libya in 2011, leaving that nation in utter chaos. We've seen how he's armed and funded the Syrian rebels in an attempt to bring down Assad. Obama is operating from the same playbook. And yes, there is a playbook.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just...
By the way, this is retired General Wesley Clark.
Hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you gotta come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision, we're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq, why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Fortunately, the future is not set in stone. We can influence the outcome, and we already are. We proved that in 2013 when the left and the right dropped their petty bickering and unified against Obama's proposal to use airstrikes against Assad. The pattern of deceit is the same, but this time the people didn't fall for it. The fact that we had the UN investigator Carla Del Ponte come out and say that the Syrian rebels were behind the sarin gas attacks helped. The fact that Putin short-circuited the US diplomatically helped. But the determining factor was the popular resistance, particularly the signs of discontent from within the military. See, the ruling class is very hesitant to take a nation to war. The people and the military strongly oppose it. That's why the first casualty of war is always the truth. What's going on right now in Iraq is horrific. The ISS is already committing atrocities against civilians on a massive scale. Inexplicably, the Obama administration did not provide Iraq with immediate air support, even after the fall of Mosul. I say inexplicably not because I support airstrikes, but because on June 12th, the U.S. military conducted its second drone strike this month in Pakistan. Why would Obama refuse to act in Iraq when civilians are being massacred, while employing drones in Pakistan without hesitation? I'll tell you why. Because the outrage over the atrocities that the ISS is committing may be enough to provide the U.S. government with a backdoor into Syria. You see, it turns out that Obama is considering airstrikes, but not just in Iraq. He wants to extend those strikes into Syria as well. Well, that's convenient, isn't it? Once the U.S. military is able to freely conduct operations in Syrian territory, getting the regime change that they want will be much, much easier. It's the classic formula: problem, reaction, solution. They created the problem, they're letting the public react and build up outrage, and then they're going to propose a solution which will sow the seeds for another generation of conflicts. To short-circuit this pattern, the public needs to come to terms with the cold, hard truth. No matter what the U.S. does at this point, and no matter how long they stay, there is no happy ending to this story. The chaos that we're seeing in this region is the direct result of half a century of U.S. military interventions and covert operations in the Middle East. It's time to acknowledge that bombing for peace doesn't work. Regime change for stability doesn't work. And you can't fix a mistake by repeating it over and over and over. If the U.S. honestly wants to stop the spread of Islamic terrorism, then they should stop funding and arming jihadists in Syria. That would be a good starting point, don't you think? If you want to keep informed about what's going on in the world, go to our website, scgnews.com, and sign up for email updates. Doing so, you'll be notified of any new articles or videos we put out. Also, be sure to subscribe to Storm Clouds Gathering on YouTube, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+.
And I urge you to follow Storm Clouds Gathering. Great organization with their video skills. They put out a lot of good info, so follow them on YouTube. So, as I said, not only do we have the weapons going into Syria, you just heard it from another source, not only are they considering airstrikes in Iraq, but now it opens the door to airstrikes in Syria. Why is that? They'll say, well, we're trying to hit targets in Syria where ISIS might have American-made weapons. I'm willing to bet they're going to let the Abrams tanks go across, and then they're going to say, we're trying to hit the Abrams tanks and other American military equipment. And then, of course, the airstrikes really won't hit that stuff. They'll end up hitting the Syrian government. Oops. But our propaganda will be like, no, we didn't hit the Syrian government. They're just lying. They're crying. Which, by the way, that could inflame tensions with Iran and Russia, too. Perhaps even China. Huh? No one mentions China. Wonder how pissed off they are over all of this. Because we don't get any of our oil, by the way, from Iraq. Like how speculators are like, oh my God, the price of oil is going to go through the roof. Yeah, because you scumbag speculators, that's why. America doesn't get its oil from Iraq. I know a lot of people are retarded and think that. When I say retarded, I'm not saying it as a pejorative. I'm saying, literally, your brain has been slowed down because of all the propaganda and crap and fear and everything, as I've talked about many times. Dutch Royal Shell, they might be a little pissed off. But all that oil goes to China. I wonder how pissed off China is. I wonder if this is also, remember, they do things on multiple levels. I wonder if this is a shot to China economically. Remember, because they also think in the future, right? I wonder if it's a shot at China at all. I wonder, I wonder how this is affecting their flow of oil to that country. Although some of the oil fields, like the northern oil fields in northern Iraq, the Peshmerga Kurds they have those secured right now. But still, I wonder if the flow has been interrupted or production has been interrupted. See, big oil doesn't like this type of stuff. That's why when people are like, it's big oil. No. Sometimes they're involved at a certain level, yes, but big oil itself doesn't make money off instability in the Middle East. They need the pumps going. Anyway, we're almost out of time. Before I forget, ladies and gentlemen, a piece of audio I didn't get a chance to air tonight called Just Who Were We Fighting in Iraq? I've played it numerous times before. If I remember, I'll try to play it on Friday. If I can remember, I'll write it down. But go to the Reality of War download section on federaljack.com. It's under the download section under Reality of War. Click on it, and there's tons of videos about the Iraq War, all the stuff. Reality of War at its best. But look up Just Who Were We Fighting in Iraq, download it, and watch it. Really simple. federaljack.com/war. 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 Look up Just Who Were We Fighting in Iraq and listen to what those guys were saying. They talk about a new world order and everything. Anyway, we're out of time, ladies and gentlemen. Do your research. The solutions to our problems are an inside job. I'll see you all again tomorrow night. I'm out.